How's it going, everybody? My name's Dave Whipple and you're watching Bush Radical. Check this out. This is the Harbor Freight Chicago electric circular saw blade sharpener. This thing sucks. Or it works really good. I don't know because I haven't opened the box yet. Let's find out. Now, every saw blade in my life is dull. As opposed to going out and buying $100 worth of saw blades, I'm gonna give this saw blade sharpener a shot. If this thing will sharpen 2 or 3 saw blades, it will pay for itself. Here's a blade guard of some kind, a couple tools, styrofoam. There's the machine. There's one of the blades that goes with it. Well, I've read through the instructions a couple times. They're pretty vague. It's more pictures and kind of figure it out as you go. But the idea is you clamp your saw blade to this adjustable clamp. And then where the saw blade is in relation to this blade is determined by this arm and where you put it. There's a little handle that slides the motor back and forth, and this little diamond wheel contacts the face of the tooth and sharpens it. That's what it's supposed to do. Let's see if it does what it's supposed to do, and let's see if the finished product is worth it. First things first, we need to put this handle on. Handle goes right there. Little lock nut. There we go. Supposed to be able to take this handle, move the whole engine into the blade, surfacing the tooth. So you take your blade, you put it on this arm. This cone centers the blade on the arm, just like so. And then there's a spring, and a washer, and then a little knob to hold it all together. This guy here is supposed to be a rest for the blade itself. So I suppose that's got to be kind of adjusted to height. Now this guy seems to be just a touch too high. Needs to come down a fraction. Right about there. Once that guy's right where you want it, you just make sure it's locked in at the bottom. There, you can see it's just touching that blade. Maybe it's a fuzz too high. I'm not sure. Never used it before. About to find out. I put the blade on the wrong way. My bad. I'm gonna flip this around. You know, some of the aluminum castings on this thing are kind of corny. But honestly, it feels like it's fairly solid. From the pictures, you want the center of this wheel to be far enough past the actual diamond blade that the face of the tooth is right parallel in line with this little diamond wheel. Yeah, that looks about right-ish. That looks close. Yeah, the idea here is to have that blade come around and contact the face of this grinding wheel pretty much flat. Once you get this blade in the right spot, you're supposed to torque down this guy to hold it in position. Then we need to set this guy up. And this guy is like a blade stop. You need to make sure that this blade is contacting that wheel. Okay, that's good. And make sure that this guy is contacting that, and then lock it down. This thing kind of wants to walk on you when you're doing that. Okay, so I think this is the way it's supposed to be set up, so that the blade is contacting the face of this diamond wheel flush, and the stopper's contacting the next tooth. So when you sharpen a tooth, you can back up, rotate it, and then you're ready to come in and trim the face of the next tooth, like so. Now I think I've got this thing set up. As far as I can tell, it's ready to sharpen this saw blade. Let's plug it in and see what it does. There's the on switch here in the back. Sounds nice. I think the trick here is make sure that once you rotate that blade, that you push it back against that little stop. You know, there's a little bit of slop, so you kind of got to hold that blade in position while you bring the other blade into it. So I've been around that blade about 3 or 4 times now. I don't know how many times you're supposed to go around it, but I think I've hit everything as good as it needs to be hit. I think all it's left to do is put the blade back on the table saw and see if it cuts. Because thinking you have it right and having a saw blade that cuts like a new one, you know, that's really what we're after, is the second one. There you can see the tips of the blade, how they've got fresh new surfaces on them. Well, it is a much nicer cut. The blade feels nice and sharp now, and the way it performs is a lot better. Now that's the real test. This is my old Ryobi chop saw. I haven't used it in half a decade because the blade is so garbagey on it, and I just don't want to go buy a new one. So I just end up using a bunch of workarounds. I'll cut stuff on a table saw, or I'll cut stuff with a worm drive, because I don't want to use this chop saw, because the blade is like a $35 blade, and it's so bad it literally smokes through wood. So this is going to be the real test. Let's take this thing apart, sharpen this blade, and we'll really know what we got. Woo! Let's see how it does with this guy. Man, that is a big blade. I think this thing says it will work up to a 16-inch blade, but I don't know that that's possible. That looks pretty good. From the last one we just did, I know that this guy has got to be tight. I mean, it's got to be tight. All right, now let's set that little blade stop. I think the second time around, I'm going to do 2 things here. I'm going to make sure that this blade stop is touching that tip before I lock it down. And I want to make sure it's at the very bottom of this gullet. Because that way, if this blade moves, I'll be able to tell, because the blade stop's going to stay where it's at. And if this arm moves a bit, I'll be able to tell by the depth stop. I think that looks about right. Go lock it down right there. I can tell you right now, there seems to be quite a bit of difference from one tooth to the next. One tooth will really catch that grinder, and the next tooth will barely touch it. Alright, so I've been around this saw blade probably 3 times. And the one thing I really noticed about this particular blade was how different one tooth was from the next. Some teeth the blade would just touch, other teeth the blade would hog right into. So they seem to be a little bit random. Also, you take a look at the gullets on this saw blade, you know, they're nice and round. But some of them, see this regular pattern in the bottom of the gullet? There's a few of them like that. I wonder if this saw has been, somebody attempted to sharpen it at some point and cut the teeth a bit off. because that gullet is not the same as some of the other gullets. Looks like it might have had, I don't know, maybe an angle grinder in there even. Well, let's throw this back on and see how it cuts. Well, the cut on this saw is nice and smooth now. You can see it's not smoking, so that's a big plus. I don't know that it feels like it's a brand new saw blade, but it definitely cuts. I mean, it went from unusable to very usable. And the cut that it made, it's a good smooth cut. You can't see any irregularities where there's an odd tooth scraping out areas. I mean, it's a decent cut. Okay, here's the bottom line. It works. It does a good job. I've sharpened 2 blades that were in miserable condition. Both of them, vast improvement. One went from being unusable to being a good cutting blade. The other one went from being pretty lousy to pretty good. I don't know that this is going to make your blades act like a fresh new blade, but it's real close. As soon as you get the concept of how you're supposed to set a saw blade up on here, the next one goes a lot faster. Now the one blade was a 7 1/4, the other blade was a 12-inch. If I was to go replace both of them, it would cost me $45. Probably about $10 for the small blade and about $25 to $35 for the bigger blade. So by sharpening those 2 blades, this machine has paid for itself in about the course of an hour with setting it up right out of the box. So I have to say, you know, if you're a carpenter who's got 25 skill saw blades floating around that have seen better days, this is a fantastic investment. You go home, have yourself a nice cup of coffee, turn the radio on, sharpen all your blades, and you've just saved yourself a couple $100. If you're a guy like myself that does concrete work and you're always cutting dirty wood that's got dry cement and sand and gravel on it, and you're running through blades all the time, this is a fantastic little machine. Like I said, kick the radio on, grab a cup of coffee, refurbish all your blades, and for $45, you can just keep doing it until you have to replace this little diamond wheel. That's the only consumable on this machine. Other than that, it's just going to keep sharpening blades until, well, until it breaks, which I don't see any reason why it should. The other thing is once this blade gets down to a point where it's kind of unusable, you know, it's double-sided. Flip it over and use the other side. So as far as the Chicago Electric Harbor Freight circular saw sharpening machine, I gotta give it a thumbs up. I like it. There's no sponsor to this video. I spent my money on this machine because I've got like 10 circular saw blades that are all garbage, and I just don't want to go buy 10 new ones. Now you guys know I like to take things and fix them up. Why not take your saw blades and fix them up? Sharpen them up and put them back to use as opposed to taking them to the scrapyard. I like everything about this machine. I like how easy it is to set up. I like the price. I like what it does. I like the concept. I'm going to give it a thumbs up. Thank you guys so much for watching this review. My name's Dave Whipple and you've been watching Bush Radical. Don't forget to sub, hit the little bell, give it a thumbs up, and we'll see you on the next one. And be radical, eh? See you soon.